Hello, everybody. We are back in Star Trek Online with another perfectly unscientific gaming build review. All right, so we know that Discovery is coming back in a couple of days to TV, and we also know that we're getting the next season of Star Trek Online Mirror of Discovery soon. And what this has done is I thought, let's put together a mirror kind of Crossfield build, not in the sense that it's from the mirror universe per se. It's just in general a mirror perspective on what you should optimally do with the Crossfield class in Star Trek Online. Obviously, the Crossfield in Star Trek Online is a build, or ship rather, that's focused on science, and normally you want to try and make all your science power synergize and such using exotic damage, and that'll give you the best results to tie together gravity well, subspace vortex, deteriorating secondary deflectors, and so on and so forth. But I thought, let's do something different, and let's do a mirror of that and focus on energy weapons, because the Crossfield can indeed support that with its 4 tactical console slots and 4 forward weapons, very similar to most escorts out there. So the only thing that's missing on this to make it an escort is an experimental weapon slot and a commander tactical seat. So we can do actually quite a bit with this, and I've chosen to focus on debuffs, and the 2 debuffs that we're focusing on, in addition to the usual attack pattern beta, are the destabilizing resonance beam, which gives us -5 damage resistance per pulse to targets in an area around a sphere of where you're initially targeting, and Structural Analysis 3, which debuffs one target and after a while spreads to other targets as well. And then on top of that, we just have Gravity Well, which is for grouping targets together. That's always nice when you're running a cannon scatter volley build, and that's what we got here. Scatter volley 2, beta 1, tac team. Then in our intel seat, we got override subsystem safeties 1, aux to bat 1, emergency power to weapons 3, and then over here we have emergency power to engines 1, which is for a con officer, and another copy of auxiliary power to battery 1 as well. So with that being said, let's have a look at the loadout of the ship. It is running 4 sensor-linked dual phaser cannons up front, various rarities. Then in the deflector slot, we got the standard Elite Fleet Intervention Protomatter deflector to boost our crit chance and crit severity when our hull HP is high. Then over here, just a secondary deflector deteriorating, which will be activated with our Structural Analysis and Destabilizing Resonance Beam. Whenever we activate those, it's a bit of extra DPS along the way, not too much, given we're running primary weapon power, but it's a bit, and we're not heavily spec'd into EPG on this build as you would do on most science build EPG exotic particle generators. The Impulse engine is the competitive engine that synergizes with our attack abilities to give us a nice burst of movement and cooldown reduction on those abilities as well. As you can see here, when we activate our firing mode bridge officer abilities, it's a nice little pop of speed and defense. Shield, the old faithful elite plasma integrated warp core. Not too much to write home about there. Then for shield, I just had this one here, the new Kara Resilient Shield. This is, I think, my only Mark 15 epic shield on this character, but if you have a different preference, you can choose what you want. And on here we have these sensor-linked turrets and the Omni. These are actually on loan to this character from a different character on my account, hence the very rare, and in the case of this Omni, only Mark 12. Then down here in our consoles, the weapon system enhancer, which is giving us an accuracy boost, and it helps with the gravity, well, a bit, but the main reason we got this is for the accuracy boost, and what this is aiming to do is negate the accuracy fall off that we have when we activate cannon scatter volley here. We could go more heavily into accuracy overflow as some builds, some higher end builds do for the cannons, but we're not doing that on this build. And what happens when you do that on higher end builds is the accuracy overflow gets channeled into extra critical chance and critical severity for your weapons, but more on that another day. Then we have the bioneural infusion circuits, which is just for critical severity at this point and a bit of hull capacity, and it does actually benefit the gravity well as well. Now, since this is a crossfield, we are running the Mycelium Ambush console, which gives us our Lorca maneuver, which we'll demonstrate right here. And this ends up being used in the build video that you'll see in just a moment. So it's a fun, nice bit of thematic element on this build. Next up is the Domino. This helps our phaser weapon damage and accuracy, and also makes those weapons fire faster and gives us a damage boost. It's a great console to be running from last year's anniversary event if you're running phaser weapons. Then we have a two-piece from the synergistic retrofitting set. And this is a Cat 1 basic damage boost for our phaser weapons, but when we pop this, because this is a science ship, it's a bit squishier than normal, takes extra threat. It gives us and our team some extra nice shields. And then the dynamic power redistributor module, when we're above 80% HP, we get 40% bonus damage, which is immaculate, and we also get 500% hull regen. So this is pretty much a staple in most DPS builds. And then just proto matter here, because as running in pugs and flying around with exotics and only having the two low-end heals on this ship means that we're going to take extra threat, and we do want to stay alive, so that's why this is here. You could swap it out for something if you want to be a bit more tanky in your heals, or you want to maybe focus on adding a bit of extra EPG. It's up to you on here, but this is one that I just threw on here to ensure that we stay alive. Now, with that being said, we're going to talk a bit about the traits on the ship, and this is my standard DPS build focusing on accuracy overflow, so I'll just run through these traits right now. Just hit pause if you want to see the tooltips for any of these. Now for Starship traits, the standard emergency weapon cycle, which gives us a boost when we use emergency power to weapons in terms of weapon cost and firing cycle haste. Cold-Hearted, which is pretty much a staple if you're running an Ox to Bat build. It controls the targets around you, slows them down, and you'll see why. That's actually an interesting synergy in just a moment. Black Alert, which, as I mentioned, you could put something else here, but we're going for a bit of a crossfield thematic theme with this. Withering Barrage to extend the duration of our Scatter Volley, and then Honored Dead, which also keeps us alive. Now, in terms of space reputation slots, we got Critical Severity, and then Controlled Countermeasures. And this works nicely with either our Cold-Hearted trait or our Gravity Well, in that controlled targets will now take 9.4% bonus weapon damage, energy weapon damage. So that's a nice boost right there. Shield penetration allows the weapons to bleed through the shields easier. This is in general a nice damage trait that you can slot. I prefer it over the armor pen trait just because there's so many sources of armor pen now. Magnified firepower for bonus weapon damage, and critical chance from the Romulan reputation. Now if we go over the skill tree here, you'll see that it's a fairly standard tactical DPS focused skill tree. We only got 2 nodes in our exotic particle generator, but that's okay. We're not focusing on that for a primary source of damage. And then for our specializations, we are running Intel and Strategist fully kitted out. Now in terms of duty officers for this ship, this one is running the 3 technicians for Ox to Bat, as well as 2 green energy weapon severity duty officers, just because the blues and the purples are rather expensive for my taste, so I like to go with greens. There's still a nice boost along the way. Then finally we have the emergency con officer, which recharges evasive maneuvers when we use emergency power to engines. So let's have a look at the run right now.
defensive capabilities are not able to withstand us. Lower your shields and await assassination.
All right, so we're back here. We're looking at the parts for this one. You'll see the majority of our damage did come from the phaser cannons, which is good. This beam array at the back was for thematic effect primarily. Deterring secondary deflector 3.8k. This could go higher, and this isn't an optimal build by any stretch of the means. Normally, I would be the last person to tell you to do this on a science ship, but I figured it's a Crossfield, and we saw what happens with the Crossfield and the Star Trek Discovery, focusing on the mirror side of things, let's just say. And then pets, we had a minor fleet support, the anti-time entanglement singularity, and then all of these things affecting right here are Black Alert, which focused in at, once again, about 2k DPS. So once again, this is not by any stretch of the means an optimal build. You would get far much better mileage about doing something else with the Crossfield, or choosing a different ship if you want to run this kind of loadout. But nonetheless, it's an interesting experiment and a fun thing to look at, since Star Trek Discovery is coming back very soon on the TV. So with that being said, we'll be back very soon with another Crossfield build, this time focusing on a pure exotic particle generator build, which will be out tomorrow. So do have a quick look on the channel for that. And if you found this video at all useful, you just liked it, give it a like, and we'll see you next time. Take care.